Hey guys, it's Hink here. So I came across a phenomenal article that talks about two things that I'm very interested in. One is penile traction therapy, basically lengthening exercises. And of course, number two is pumping. And so the title of the article is Emerging Role of Penile Traction Therapy in Vacuum Erection Devices. And this was a review that was published in 2022. And so we're going to be breaking this down today and going through all the things that we can learn about basically how to get bigger using the data published from actual urologists. And so guys, as always, the link for this paper is in the description. It might require a subscription to get it, but it's always good to read these papers because I'm telling you, there's so much information in them. But in case you don't have access, that's what I'm here for. Before we go any further, guys, just take a second and leave a like on this video. It literally costs you nothing and it helps me out quite a bit. So I really appreciate it. And of course, if you're not subscribed, that goes a long way as well. So the intro of these papers is some of the most interesting topics because they often break down all of the background information about basically penile enlargement, especially in this case. And so to start, they talk about pumping. Guys, if you haven't seen my other videos on pumping or my entire pumping playlist, check it out. But they talk about some of the reasons why I'm such a big proponent for pumping. And so I'm not going to talk about all the papers they mentioned, but they do talk about this one. It's called The Hemodynamics of Vacuum Constriction Erections, Assessment by Color Doppler Ultrasound. I've talked about this paper before in my other videos, but in this paper, and I will read to you, after a trial of vacuum constriction device and application of constricting band, cavernous body cross-sectional area doubled. Once again, when we're talking about pumping, it's about actually enlarging those sinusodal spaces, those chambers inside the penis, and trying to make them bigger than they would occur naturally. And that's demonstrated here by this Doppler ultrasound. I believe this paper is free, so I highly suggest you read it and check it out. Very interesting read. And guys, furthermore, they talk about the additional benefits of pumping. Once again, research into the changes caused by VED usage includes beneficial effects such as anti-hypoxia, so basically the opposite of having low oxygen in the tissue, anti-fibrosis, so anti-scarring, and anti-apoptosis. So apoptosis is basically programmed cell death, which you do not want cell death occurring in your penile tissue. This has been proven in these different instances to help with all of those processes, or at least to be anti those processes, meaning pro-penile health. And they also talk about some of the pathophysiology involved in penile traction therapy, or PT. And guys, I have my other videos on extenders and I have videos on manual stretches, but what it comes down to is the benefits that can occur from traction therapy. There's this concept called mechanotransduction, and basically when you stretch something, that it can release certain signals that can trigger things like growth or elongation. And in this case, what they talk about here, which I'll read to you, is that there's significant increases in collagenase and metalloproteinases, which can facilitate fibrous plaque softening and extension. Now, this is specifically talking about in Peyronie's disease, but the fact of the matter is, guys, like your tunica, the fibrous sheath of the penis is made from different collagens, okay? And so in order to get that to elongate, what you need is different things like collagenase to break it down, and also things called matrix metalloproteinases, or MMPs, which I've talked about on prior videos, which can help to break down those bonds, allowing for the tissue to expand and eventually either elongate or expand when it comes to girth. And so they talk about those physiologic principles here. And that's basically a direct cause and effect, or a direct physiology as to why an extender works the way it does. And so we can have pretty concrete evidence that this is the case. Now, in this paper, it's basically a review article. They looked at as many articles as they could when it came to penile traction devices and also vacuum erection devices. And so the first screenshot I'm going to have Callie put on the screen now. So this is looking at vacuum erection device studies when it comes to Peyronie's disease. Now, I know, guys, Peyronie's disease does not equal the same thing as small penis syndrome, but there's still some data that can be inferred, and that is very encouraging. For example, looking at some of these studies, if you see that second study there published in 2001, there was a mean length increase of 2.1 centimeters over a minimum of 3 months. That is implying, which I don't believe you're going to get from any pump, that you can gain almost an inch in a minimum of 3 months using a vacuum erection device. Now, they do talk about some correction in the curvature, which can contribute to a gain of length, but still, that's a phenomenal increase. There's also several studies, including the one below that and the one below that, demonstrating a gain of about 0.4 centimeters, which to me is more realistic when it comes to length gains from vacuum erection devices alone. I get it. It's in Peyronie's disease. I can see you guys in the comments. Actually, Hank, that's in Peyronie's disease. Don't you know?
Don't do the voice.
But regardless, guys, the data is still there suggesting length increases when it comes to the use of vacuum erection devices. Now, keep in mind, guys, this is length data, and I've said this before. If you're not including the data looking at PRP or the P-shot, which you haven't seen my video that I just published on that, check it out. The data that shows that vacuum erection devices work or pumping works is actually for length increases. Doesn't mean it doesn't work for girth, but if you're just purely being scientific, actually, it's for length increases. And so, guys, next we're going to look at the use of basically pumping. This is in patients that are basically either planning to get penile prosthetic surgery or basically have already had it. Now, once again, guys, data is limited. You can see the studies range all the way from 1997 all the way to 2017. But the fact remains, okay, especially if you look at these last two papers over in the significant findings, that the stretched penis length increased 0.92 centimeters in 3 months of use with the vacuum erection device, and then a mean of increase in 0.8 centimeters compared to the control group in the preoperative stretched penis length, okay? Now, once again, guys, we're looking at cohorts of patients that are not your average small penis syndrome patients that just want to get bigger. This is people with actual penile pathology, but the fact still remains they are causing measurable enlargement of the penis, especially when it comes to length. Now, what about the use of pumping in small penis syndrome? So guys, this paper was published before like the P-Long study, which if you haven't seen my video, check it out. Or like I said, the study looking at PRP and pumping in that regard. But there was one really shitty study that was done and looked at 37 sexually active guys somewhere in the Middle East that pumped for 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week for 6 months. And it still showed that the mean penile length increased from 7.6 centimeters to 7.9 centimeters, but it was not statistically significant. Now, is that only because there wasn't enough patients, or is it because that difference was not statistically significant? Either way, you know, it was a poorly done study. It's the best data we have. I'm not coming at those authors. So if you're an author watching this, which you're not, you know, don't at me Hink in the comments, but all the comments help engagement, guys. So let me know what you think about this. But they also showed a poor patient satisfaction rating of only 30%, which is pretty interesting to me because most of the guys that I know that pump find it actually very pleasant to do and actually very enjoyable. And I don't understand why they found this unpleasant, even though it did show that there was an enlargement in size. But once again, this is limited data. So you cannot definitively conclude anything one way or another from this study saying that, oh, pumping doesn't work or pumping does work, okay? But it is interesting that they actually looked at guys that just had small penises. Now, next, we're going to look at the studies that were actually done on penile traction therapy, essentially using extenders. By the way, guys, the Apex extenders are available on peakmalephysique.com as well as pumps if you are looking for devices. Specifically, we're going to skip the studies looking at Peyronie's disease because they actually looked at 3 different studies looking at traction devices in guys that just felt like they had smaller penises, okay? And what you can see here on this screenshot is that they noticed significantly increased changes in flaccid and stretched penile length, some as many as almost 2 centimeters in as little as 3 months, like in that second study there. And in that third study, the Nowrouzi et al., you can actually see that mean gains of 1.7, 1.3, and 1.2 centimeters, respectively, when it comes to flaccid, stretched, and erect penis lengths, guys. These are not in guys with Peyronie's disease. This is guys that just want to get bigger, and it proved that this not only increased your flaccid, but also your stretched penile length and actually erect length. In some studies, almost up to 1 inch in 6 months, guys. And so we have the data showing that enlargement works. You guys that, you actually think enlargement doesn't work, blah, blah. Like, there's objective evidence. I just don't understand how people are that either stupid or naive. I'm not sure what it is, but there's like several published studies here that we can point to, at least when it comes to extenders. And even urologists like Rina Malik agrees that extenders work. So there are a couple of important points that I want to bring up. Now, they looked at both first and second generation like penile traction devices in Peyronie's disease. And what they found is that in the second generation penile traction devices, like some of them were used for as little as 30 minutes, whereas previous studies were using them for as many as basically 30 minutes all the way up to like 6 to 8 hours. And so guys, if you haven't seen my video on basically how long is the optimal like routine time when it comes to extenders, check out that video or just check out my extender playlist. But once again, this gives evidence to something that I've been saying once I came into the scene, that more is not necessarily more. And guys, one of the most important things from the discussion is that they say that basically in this paragraph here, summarizing it, it says, we need to do randomized control trials. With more and more evidence of small penis syndrome and these papers showing that either like vacuum erection devices or penile traction therapy can actually make these penises bigger, I do think that it's going to lead to more and more eventual larger randomized control trials that we can objectively point to and once and for all say like, yes, it works. And guys, I say this every time, but maybe even by the time this video goes live, I will have actually recorded my HINK trial video, but I promise you the data is coming, okay? And once again, it's not a randomized control trial, but it does show more objective data of increases in both length and girth using simple techniques that, of course, I talk about in my course where I have put on over 1.5 inches in length, guys, and over 1 inch in girth. And so if you're interested in getting bigger based on real scientific techniques, consider checking that out. Link is in the description. But guys, I thought this was a very nice review article. It helps to hit on some very important topics when it comes to pathophysiology, physiology, underlying basically mechanics of basically how vacuum erection devices and penile traction therapy works, with very clear and concise evidence and very nice summary tables of how and why this stuff works. So let me know what you think, guys. Did you find this video helpful? What have you found has been most helpful between extenders or vacuum hanging or pumping? Or do you think that this is all a hoax and this is just something that I make up to give guys copium about the size? Please leave a like on the video before you dip. Remember, guys, you are so much more than the size of your D. Be the best version of yourself. There's nothing wrong with self-improvement, but you are enough just as you are. I will catch you on the next one. Before I dip, guys, watch one of those videos that's going to come up on the screen. All right, guys, peace and love.
Dr. Hink got the plug on the health, yeah. Got you thinking about your wealth, yeah. In his office, no stealth, yeah. Pinnacle of that below the belt, yeah. Checks and balance, he's managing. Working miracles, no damage. Got you covered, no panicking. Stay calm. In the clinic, no vanishing. Yeah, with Doc Hink, it's the way.